That majority refused to block an effective abortion ban in Texas last year.
The law known as Senate Bill 8 prohibits abortions after 6 weeks. It also allows people to sue abortion providers.
And now a leaked draft ruling suggests they will strike down Roe versus Wade once and for all, leaving the decisions up to individual states. Pro and anti-abortion activists took to the streets across America. Elizabeth Warren's a Democrat senator.
69% of people across this country want Roe versus Wade to maintain.
We don't want to dismember children in the womb.
So setting up the stage for one of the biggest political and legal fights in modern American history.
Rachel Venables reporting to Scott Lucas, who's Professor Emeritus of US Politics and American Studies at the University of Birmingham, editor of the politics website EA Worldview. Scott, I've asked you some tricky questions down the years. Here probably comes number one. Why is this? Why is abortion such a big deal in the US? Good morning.
Morning to you, Nick. Where do we start with abortion? In part, and I say this again, I'm the son of a preacher, so I grew up in this religious culture where you had the move with Roe v. Wade to allow abortion rights in the 70s. And indeed, you had the abortion law here in 1967 in the UK. In the US, you had the rise of the evangelical movement, the evangelical Christian movement in the 70s, and they became very, very political, and abortion was one of their key issues. And some politicians either agreed with them or they saw an opportunity for political gain. So you heard, for example, that Ronald Reagan supported a constitutional amendment on abortion. But here's the key thing, Nick. Ronald Reagan stepped back from that. He thought he didn't have the traction to get a constitutional amendment to ban abortion. And so really for the next 50 years, that route was blocked, by Republicans to try to ban this at the top level. So what do they do to try to take political advantage of abortion? They do two things. The one is they try to pack the Supreme Court with conservatives. And that's what became possible with Donald Trump, as you heard in your report.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what did Trump bring to the dynamic, Scott?
Well, you had a court which, before Trump took office, was roughly split between conservatives and moderates, and the court had repeated in decisions over the years that it would not overturn Roe v. Wade. But then he appointed Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. And according to sources, all three of those justices are alongside Samuel Alito, as well as Claire Thomas, to overturn the ban in July. That changed the dynamic of the court at the highest level. And what the court did is it linked up with a second development. And that is, rather than trying to ban abortion at the national level, Republicans tried to ban it at the state level. So 26 states have either moved to ban abortion or sharply restrict it. 18 of those states now have trigger laws, or about to have them, which say on the day that Roe v. Wade is overturned, the ban on abortion immediately comes into effect. Not within months, not within weeks, immediately. So it's the combination of
I mean, I have my own experience. I was 18 when I had an abortion. It was an unwanted pregnancy, and thankfully I had a mother who was incredibly supportive and protective and helped me through that process. And thankfully I live in a country where abortion is legal, but had I not, I would have had a baby that was entirely unwanted, and it would have materially changed my life for the worse. So I think there are lots of arguments about abortion should be legal if there are medical issues, which of course, absolutely should be. There are lots of arguments that abortion should be legal in cases of rape, which, of course they should, but I come at it from the angle that also women must have choice over their own bodies and their lives.
I'm honestly not seeking to upset you, but to someone who would say abortion is effectively murder, and that's a decision you took at 18, what would you say to those people, Jolie?
I would say that the rights of the woman who is carrying that pregnancy must be more important.
Then they quote to you, what about the right of the unborn child, is what they quote back to you, Jolie.
But the unborn child is an unborn child. It's not yet a baby, it's a fetus. So the rights of the woman must be prioritised over the rights of a fetus.
Was it a difficult decision, or did you know straight away, I just don't want to go forward with this?
I knew straight away I didn't want the baby. It was a terrifying decision. It was incredibly hard. When I went to the abortion clinic, there were protesters outside who had signs of a woman killing a baby. People were shouting at me that I was a murderer, and I was only 18 years old. It was really terrifying. And
how wonderful that your mum was so supportive there.
She was incredible. I'm very, very lucky. Not many people have a mum
I think a lot of parents would actually be quite angry at all of this going through, if you know what I'm saying, Julie.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you get different parents, don't you? My friends were unbelievably impressed with the way my mum handled it. There was no judgment, just love and support. So I feel very grateful to her.
Jolie, thanks for sharing so much. Jolie Brearley is an author and also founder of the organisation Pregnant Then Screwed. Your reactions to that? And we're coming really back to the UK as well, and really down to the streets with those LTNs, low traffic neighbourhood schemes, that might need to go back because they haven't asked local businesses and traders. Well, I'm asking you now, what have they done to your trade? 9:16, LBC News headlines, Simon Conway.
The EU has called on all member states to stop importing oil from Russia by the end of the year. The conflict in Ukraine and rising wholesale fuel costs have pushed shop prices up at their fastest rate in a decade. Party leaders are out for a final day of campaigning before elections across the UK tomorrow. LBC weather, rain or showers, which will be heavy for some, becoming drier and brighter in the west, a high of 18 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. Delays of about 45 minutes on the M25 clockwise from junction 29 at the A127 to 31 at Lakeside. That was after the accident that happened earlier. All the lanes are open now, but it's still very slow. And on the surrounding routes, especially the A127 and on the A13. In Devon, one lane's closed on the M5 northbound at junction 31 at the A38 exit. And that's following an accident. Delays of about 40 minutes on the approach. In Greater Manchester, there are queues on the M60 anti-clockwise for about half an hour to junction 24 at Denton Island after the flooding. But the good news is all the lanes are now back open. And also the lanes are all back open on the M61 southbound at the Kersley Spur.
LBC. Hold on to your mugs. EE's Full Fiber is here. New broadband that can handle anything. And whatever you think that means, times it by a zillion and dip it in chocolate. Because this broadband connects 100 devices in your home. Search EE Full Fiber.
18.3% UK availability. Check coverage at ee.co.uk.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973. This is LBC.
When it feels like money's tight, it's good to know that at Tesco, we price match hundreds of products to Aldi every week. From strawberries to crumpets, so you can be sure you'll find the products that matter most to you. Because right now, every little helps. Prices match pro rata and checked on hundreds of comparable products from GBLD stores and or online twice weekly. Price most often found matched excluding promotions. Products match varied by week and availability varies by store excluding Express and Northern Ireland. Details tesco.com/LD price match.
Today's tale begins the night the internet went down at the Smith family. Son, the dad was gone powerless as his son aged before his eyes.
The game has been loading forever.
Save yourself from broadband nightmares. Get BT's unbreakable hybrid broadband backed up by EE, the UK's best network. Search BT Hybrid Broadband. 88% UK availability. 4G connection takes up to 175 seconds. Best for mobile network performance. Verify at ee.co.uk/claims.
Selling your car doesn't have to mean haggling with strangers or pretending to be a car connoisseur. Simply sell your car the motorway way. It's the new sell your car from home way. All while car dealers compete to give you the best price way. It's the you could get up to £1,000 more way. This is the new way to sell your car. This is the motorway. Sell your car at motorway.co.uk. For pricing claim verification, visit motorway.co.uk.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's a massive deal in the United States, and who knows which way it will go if that Politico leak is right. Sam is in Canterbury. Sam, you're on the radio. Good morning. Sam, no, not to be there. Last chance.
Hi, Nick.
Yes, you're on the radio, so go ahead.
Yeah, Nick, good morning. Yeah, who says women don't have a choice over their bodies? They can have liposuction, they can have Botox, they can have a nose job, but murder a child? Oh, no. I think that's absolutely wrong.
Well,
and
hold on.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, how can you tell a woman what to do with her life?
But that's not her life. That's an unborn child. And it's part of the man's DNA.
No, hold on a second.
50% is the man.
Hold on a second. I mean,
yeah.
I appreciate many people find it a very difficult subject, but in an instance where the child, the unborn child, might be a product of an incestuous relationship or even rape, surely you're not condemning that woman to have the child there.
Only in that case, yes. But in ordinary cases, no. The child can be given up for adoption. But that's the best outcome.
But why would you force a woman to go through bearing a child 9 months, and then when the child is born, you effectively take it from the mother's arms and put it up for fostering or adoption? Why would you do that, Sam? When a woman can take a decision, it's not at the right time, I don't want to proceed with this, I'm going to go to a proper clinic and get it taken care of.
But that the decision should also be the husband's decision. That's his child as well.
Guess what? Some people sometimes have sex and they're not married. Happens a bit.
But still, it's part of that, with the exception of rape and things like that.
Well, I suppose your call got us started. Thank you. I feel we've gone back in time quite a degree to that. We may return to that subject, but I really think that we need people. And thank you again. I don't want to speak ill of you now. You've gone some, but I think we need someone with their views perhaps a little more up to date than some of those were. So while we try and get those together, let's move to other stories. And those complete change of pace, but bring it back to the UK, certainly. Those LTNs, low traffic neighbourhoods or low traffic neighbourhood schemes, hundreds of those, and cycle lanes have been introduced nationwide since the launch of the government's £2 billion active travel fund 2 years ago, May 2020. Now the impact on businesses from these neighbourhoods must be considered, Downing Street has admitted. Their rollout has led to scores, I think more than scores, it says scores here, of complaints from residents around disabled access, adverse effect on businesses and rising pollution levels. Traders near road closures claim they've had to raise prices as much as a 25% or a quarter, because they cannot attend fewer jobs. They can attend fewer jobs, they cannot get to certain jobs. The Prime Minister will now consider this, it says. Let's put this to Rob Blackie, who is former Lib Dem London Assembly candidate in favour of LTNs. I need to stress, obviously, for balance, he is not standing in elections tomorrow. And thank you for coming on, Mr. Blackie. Don't you think... Thank you, sir. Traders have a right here, don't they, to be consulted? Good morning.
Oh, completely they do. Yeah, everybody wants to live
in a nice neighbourhood without too much traffic going past their door. So the real test for whether or not LTNs work isn't some sort of ideological thing of they're great or they're terrible. It has to be, do people where they live feel they make the area a better place? So I think this is why consultation is so incredibly important. It's quite reasonable for traders to have a say in that and say whether or not they think it's working for them. And also for everybody else in the area who might have a point of view on it.
So is it fair to say, Mr. Blackie, then, that in some instances these were put in wrongly because there was no prior consultation?
I think a lot of people around London think that. There was very little consultation for understandable reasons. In the middle of a pandemic, they were brought in very quickly. However, there should have been a lot more consultation, and we've now had enough time for councils to do better consultations. And I think some of the better councils have taken those consultations and they've tweaked them to make them better. Around where I live, I got a fine for driving through an LTN myself by accident, and people quite rightly want to. Don't do that by accident, and people want to be reasonable and to make them possible for people who might need to drive.
I don't need to tell you. I don't need to tell you though that. Let's just, for the purpose of debate, say you get 50 people together from the same street. It's highly likely 25 are going to say yes, let's put the big plant pots in, or whatever it might be, and 25 are going to say. So who then? You need the wisdom of the judgment of Solomon here. Do this.
Oh, absolutely, and that's because people have different uses for their cars. Some people don't have cars. It's extremely hard, and really what we need in the long run is what a lot of countries are moving towards now, which is road user pricing, where you charge people less if they have a greener car, and you charge them less if they drive around in the middle of the night when there's no traffic and they're not causing congestion. And that's what we really need to move towards, because that's much fairer. That means we can exempt people who really need to travel. It also means we would charge people for problems they cause to other people, whether or not that's pollution or congestion. And of course, these days with smartphones, that's much easier to remember than it would have been. 10, 15 years ago, that would have been impossible. Today, that's quite practical.
Lastly, how do you think this will finally sort itself out? Some will have to go, others will be reworked or tweaked. What do you think the outcome will be?
I think that will be exactly the case. I think in the long run, we're going to move towards all trying to drive greener cars and drive less, simply because it's all a good idea for us to get healthier by doing that. But that can't be everybody, and it can't be all the time, so it's going to have to be a compromise.
Grateful for your time today. Thanks, Rob Blackie, former Lib Dem London Assembly candidate, not standing tomorrow, I hasten to add. Richard says, I think the question is, what do they do for you? From 3 o'clock, Dulwich Village is a bus lane. They don't consult the residents. I know that, Richard, because I went through Dulwich recently and I couldn't believe how difficult it was. John says, the Greenwich LTNs have been removed. Not everyone knows it. The planters have been moved to the side. The CCT cameras are still up on the poles, so many drivers still avoid it. We'll come back to this in a moment, but let's go back to the story we started. Please say that's a better representation of callers now. Amelia in Kingston. Amelia, it's a very big deal in the US. Where do you stand on this? Good morning.
Morning, Nick. I phoned up in response to one of your last callers who said he accused abortion of murder. And I find it ironic in the sense that a lot of women are expected to be the ones to take contraception when it comes to having sex before marriage.
Yes.
And that's always put down to them. But then when it comes to abortion, it's then all the burden is completely on the woman. And the abolition of abortion doesn't necessarily promote life. It just means more women are having more abortions in unsafe circumstances. I was unfortunately someone who did have an abortion, and it was never an easy decision. It never is, and you've got to remember, abortion is never no one chooses to have an abortion, but they are forced into circumstances where they don't feel it's safe or appropriate at the time. And while it was tough at the time, I'm so grateful that I didn't have to go through with the child, because I was with an ex who I despise now. He really made my life horrible, miserable. And I'm now in a position where I'm doing well in my career, and I always made a promise to myself the next time I did have a child, it would be in much better circumstances. I can provide for it. And similar to your previous guest, where I was lucky where I had my mum at the time
yes,
to help me through the abortion, because my ex at the time, he just went off the radar. I didn't hear pretty much for a week when I was going through it, and it was a traumatizing time. I was at university as well. in my third year at university, and it was terrible. And the idea that men think that they can suddenly say, like, oh, well, it's not down to you, it's down to the poor fetus that they deserve to have a life. Well, I don't understand how it's not necessarily for me about pro-life. It's more about men putting more control over women and how they deal with their bodies.
Let me ask you this. An earlier caller said that in your instance, Amelia, you should have had the child and allowed to be adopted or fostered.
But even, it's difficult to say, because I remember it was such a difficult procedure when I went through it that I then thought the next time if I were to get pregnant again at this age, I'm in my early 20s. I don't think I could do that. I couldn't personally go through the process of giving it away, because it sounds strange because it is an unborn fetus, but you do develop a slight connection with it. Like, sure. I remember having really vivid dreams about it for months afterwards, stuff like that. And I personally couldn't imagine being the one to give away the first child. If I have a child, I want that one to be mine. I want that one to be like spoiled and actually looked after. I couldn't go through the process of actually giving it away.
I hear what you're saying. Amelia, thanks for your candour on that and sharing so much. Talia in Boreham Wood, what do you want to tell me? Good morning.
I want to say that we need to talk about these children, because if it goes overturned, you've got loads, probably millions of children who are going to be born into families that can't look after them, or they're going to get put up for adoption. And I do psychology, and the trauma associated with the children who have been adopted or in foster care, that's not a life for a child. So it's not even just about these women. If we're really caring about children, they should have the right to not be born into a world that isn't going to be kind to them. And that's why I think it's so important that women can say, you know, look, I can't look after this child, and I don't want them to go through the trauma of being in the care system.
If you'll allow...
I think it's the kind of thing you can do.
Okay. If you'll allow that America is quite a developed country, how surprised are you that they're even considering this, Talia?
Honestly, I'm not massively surprised. I mean, I know this is unrelated, but even with the gun control laws, like for a civilized society, I think that's terrible. I think there's a lot of things in America that I think are extremely wild for a first world civilized country.
Talia, thank you. We'll stay with this conversation. We're also looking at, apparently, 500 burglaries a day unsolved by the police in a new report. I'll give you more details on that after this. It's 9:30. You're listening to Breakfast with me, Nick Ferrari, here on LBC The News. Simon Conway.
All 27 EU countries are being urged to ban oil imports from Russia as part of a new package of sanctions. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has announced the proposals. Some member states are highly dependent on Russia for energy supplies. The Environment Secretary George Eustice has suggested shoppers could choose value brands to help cope with rising food prices. Shop price inflation reached 2.7% in April, its highest rate in more than a decade. New research has found finance workers have seen their pay surge during the pandemic, widening the gap in earnings inequality. On average, people in the sector have seen their salaries increase 31%, compared with 14% across all other industries. LBC weather: rain across northern and western parts will move southeastwards, turning heavy in places with some hail and thunder, becoming drier and brighter in the west, a high of 18 degrees.
Tonight, with Andrew Marr from 6 p.m, only on LBC.
The government's policy of sending patients untested for COVID and into care homes where thousands die. That all of this. We now have a different ministerial team. This is sickening. Neither Matt Hancock nor the new health secretary nor the officials responsible for the advice were prepared to come on and answer questions about it. But we are not going to be deflected. We have brought together all the voices you need to hear.
Tonight, with Andrew Marr from 6 p.m. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC.
Today's tale begins when the Smith family sat down to enjoy a film. Suddenly they heard the scariest sound.
The Wi-Fi is down.
The family were doomed to wait for a film that wouldn't load.
Save yourself from broadband nightmares. Get BT's unbreakable hybrid broadband backed up by EE, the UK's best network. Search BT Hybrid Broadband. 88% UK availability. 4G connection takes up to 175 seconds. Best for mobile network performance. Verify at ee.co.uk/claims.
I'm Tom Swarbrick, and this is The Session, the podcast that will change the way you see the world.
About life as the software, and the chemistry that we've defined life by is the hardware.
Each week we're joined by philosophers, neuroscientists, and engineers who explain that are conscious, that time isn't real, and how we'll live on Mars.
Based on the current technology we have, all we need to do is do an experiment at scale, and we might be able to actually engineer the origin of life in the lab.
Listen and subscribe to The Session on Global Player.
You want a great new car with style, so choose online. We're delivering for free, so you can save your time. Every car includes a warranty. That's what we do, and we guarantee your love. We'll get your money back.
Whether you're buying online or through our trusted dealers, feel good your way with Hey Car. T's and C's apply.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Let's continue to discuss the impact of that Roe v. Wade potential ruling in the United States. Gay is in Bath. Gay, what do you want to tell me? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. One thing that they haven't discussed so far, but I've heard them discussing on CNN before, is the fact that you could have somebody like a taxi driver that takes somebody to an abortion clinic, and they find they will come for him. And so
Sorry,
it's going to turn.
Sorry, that they will come. Sorry, who will they go after? Sorry, who will come for him?
Well, if you're going to be found, if you go and have an abortion and you get in, it's against the law, you're going to be in trouble. But if somebody takes you to an abortion clinic, say a taxi driver, if people find out if you discuss it with a neighbour and they shop you in, whoever helps you is going to be just as guilty as the person who has the abortion.
Oh, I see. Right.
And it sounds really bizarre, but it's America, so what do you expect?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Got it.
It's horrible. It's horrible for people. Nobody wants to have an abortion. It's not on your shopping list. Oh, must have an abortion today. It's not your first choice. People are desperate, and it's going to affect the poor people, especially in some black areas. Some people can't even afford to travel across borders.
Yeah, I mean, I think abortion doesn't respect, skin colour, does it? There are women who want to, irrespective of what colour they might be. I put to you the same question I put to the earlier call to Talia. How surprised are you that a country that you would imagine is quite developed as the United States could be going down this path?
Sadly, I'm not surprised because I've seen it brewing, but I'm surprised it popped out of burst into the news yesterday, because states have been planning this, I think, with the help of Donald Trump. So he's had all the people, Greg Abbott in Texas, he's raring to go with this. But it's also the 6-week law. Some girls don't even realise they're pregnant at 6 weeks, and you can't have an abortion after 6 weeks. Well, it is like the Dark Ages.
Well, certainly many campaigners would say it would be going back to the Dark Ages if the US court does take that decision. Okay, thanks for that. We'll have more calls on that in a moment. But, of course, we need to reflect as many stories as we possibly can. And we talked on Friday about generally how the police are not solving all crimes. We need a little bit more. And moving to burglary, just before that, you may recall that we had some calls from people. I have to say, Kent particularly did badly. A caller from Gravesend, and a caller, I think, was from the Medway area as well. We have put those charges to Kent police, and they're yet to fully respond. So we'll give them another day. They've had a sort of bland statement come back that they're doing all they can to investigate crime. Whatever it might be, that could be written by a child. So we'll give them another 24 hours and see how they fare, and then we'll drop a proverbial tub over them and see how we get on after that. So let's come back to this conversation now, which, as I say, this is focusing. So that was all crime on Friday. Now we're drilling down to burglaries, and a really shocking headline. The police chiefs are under pressure to catch more burglars as more than 500 break-ins go unsolved every day. My heart goes out to you if you've been burgled like that, because the impact must be absolutely devastating. Home Office figures show out of 240,000 cases last year, 190,000 were closed with no suspect identified. That is all but 80% of cases closed. Some forces closed well over 80% without catching the thief. That includes, what a surprise, the Met in London, West Midlands and Hampshire. In some instances, of course, it is reported that police officers haven't even turned up. And that old line of, we'll just give you a crime number so you can get the insurance, appears to be true as well. Michael Fraser is a home security expert, but was a burglar. How surprised are you by that figure, those figures I've just read out? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. I'm not surprised at all. The problem is we're going through a bit of a hardship time in the UK, and burglary is such an easy crime to commit that more opportunists are going out there and committing crimes. The problem is, and you can't blame the police, but they haven't got the resources to follow up all these burglaries.
But you say that, Mr. Fraser, I don't know whether you're aware, but last week we saw some demonstrations with Insulate Britain or Stop Oil or whatever. They could get 14 police officers to the M25 like that to look at the demonstrators. They can't do anything to do burglaries.
The problem is burglary is committed at any time. A burglary is committed every couple of minutes. So somebody could walk down the road, decide to do a burglary on a property, and they go in. The police aren't aware of when it's going to happen. The problem, if we, as the public, try and secure our property, you're making it less likely a target. And that's the biggest thing. The police just cannot follow up on every crime. Someone blocking the M25 is a little bit different.
How quickly does word go out? That is to say that in a certain part of town or in a county, a couple of people have done a few burglaries, nothing's been taken, no police action. Does the word get round and people think, wow, this has made it easier for us?
Well, it's out there anyway. Police will come out. They'll send a crime prevention officer. They'll also give you a crime number. But they do go out. It's just when they can get there. If there's a lot happening in that area, they're going to take a lot longer to get there. I don't feel it's their fault. I just feel we have to do more ourselves to protect the property.
And
the problem is, if you look at how a burglary is committed, the opportunist is looking for exactly that, the opportunity. So don't put calendars in your back window telling the burglar what days you're out. And that's what people tend to do, or they won't lock the front door properly. They've just got one cylinder lock. All these are a dead giveaway. You don't do anything about security. And as soon as you do, they'll move on.
Lastly, how important are burglar alarms, lights, whatever else you might be able to put in?
Fantastic. Anything you do is obviously a brilliant thing. And also take pictures of every single room in the house. When they do a burglary, they tend to tip the place upside down. And you forget because you're obviously you're
distressed. You're so distressed. Yeah.
But if you take pictures, it's good for the insurance company. And in the first place, if you protect the front and back, they're not going to get in.
Michael Fraser, thank you. You are a home security expert. You were a burglar. So speaking from a degree of experience, I should say, in that one. Calls coming in on that, but also Paul, thank you. You've been hanging on the line. The other story we looked at, which I got lost in the mix because of so many people getting involved in our conversation about Roe v. Wade, are these LTNs, low traffic neighbourhoods, and low traffic neighbourhood schemes, whatever you prefer, and the fact that many of them now will have to be reviewed because they haven't assessed the impact on local tradesmen and women, of course, and local businesses. Paul in Deal. Paul, what do you have to say on that? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. So I drive buses and coaches around Kent and even in London, and my example that I want to give that these do not work is they just cause nothing but congestion. One of the best examples is Regent Street. Now, Regent Street in London used to be 2 lanes up, 2 lanes back.
Yeah.
They've now extended the pavement, shoved in a cycle lane, and they made it 1 lane each way. It took me an hour and 20 minutes in my coach from Broadcasting House, where I picked up, to Trafalgar Square.
Just help me with that. That's going to be a distance of what, 1 to 2 miles?
It's not more. It's about 1.5 miles, and it's just trying to get across Oxford Circus Junction, trying to get across 2 box junctions without getting a ticket. Cars coming from each direction from other roads. It's an absolute nightmare. And the people who think about these just need they just need to go and bury their head in the sand where they've dug it out from, because they're an absolute joke. I can go on about Eltham High Street, I can go on about many other places in London, and the Mayor of London wonders why congestion and the pollution is at such a high level, because LTNs do not work. They never have, they never will, and it's an absolute waste of government money yet again.
I'm totally with you. For the people who don't know Regent Street or don't know London, it is a very busy road. There are plenty of shops, but there was a perfectly good, wide enough pavement that had managed to survive for centuries, literally for centuries. And then because of these dam schemes, as Paul rightly says, we have one lane going east-west or north-south and the one going the other way. Lastly, Paul, of course, one bus stops and that's it. The whole line, they let passengers off or get passengers on. That stops the whole road.
Well, of course it does. I mean, there's 5 bus stops down, 5 bus stops back. The worst one is by Hanover Street or Hanover Square, it's called. And you get 2 buses stop. I mean, when I've done it, there was a bus broken down at the bus stop the other way, and nothing can get around him.
It is quite incredible, Paul. Thank you for that. Safe driving. Let's talk about burglary, the impact, and the idea, of course, now that so many are not being investigated. Anne in St Albans says police must prioritise. Burglary isn't a priority at the moment, but hate crime is. Helen says we had a burglary 23 years ago. We were in bed. The police gave us an insurance number. That's what so many people do, I'm afraid. Simon, is it Edenfield you're in? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Where's Edenfield?
Deepest Lancashire, Rosendale.
That's where you are. Okay, so what are you going to tell me?
Well, I was just listening with interest, and I noticed the other day on the TV the number of police officers at sporting events like football matches. There seems to be hundreds of them, and I know it's a large-scale event, but they're in best-dressed uniforms, horses. There's a whole turnout from the local constabulary at those sorts of events, and I wonder how many police officers are left on duty at the local stations. I'm a member of the Village Residents Association where we live.
Yeah.
And many of the monthly meetings, there's anecdotes of sheds being burgled and rang the police and they gave me a crime number. And sometimes we've had the police come to the meeting and there's one PCSO will come and say, look, I'm the only person on duty tonight in the whole of Rosendale, which is quite a big section of Lancashire. Sometimes she's told me that whole towns like Blackburn, Bury and Bolton have only had 2 or 3 officers on duty at any one time because of sickness and shift patterns. But then I just wonder where all these police officers come from at major sporting events.
Well, in some instances, of course, they are paid for by the club. In many instances, they're paid for by the clubs. But I think yours, to a broader point, is right. They do seem to be able, when they need them, they do seem to be able to find these police officers. And then we're told, of course, they can't investigate these sort of crimes. Simon, thank you for that. We'll talk more. Colin, you're going to be talking about that subject as well. And we'll come back to those stressful LTNs as well. But it's all after the 9:45 LBC News headlines. Simon Conway.
The EU has called on all member states to stop importing oil from Russia by the end of the year. The conflict in Ukraine and rising wholesale fuel costs have pushed shop prices up at their fastest rate in a decade. Party leaders are out for a final day of campaigning before elections across the UK tomorrow. LBC weather, rain or showers, which will be heavy for some, becoming drier and brighter in the west, a high of 18 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. Delays of about 45 minutes in Devon on the M5 northbound up to junction 38. It's after an accident. There were severe delays on counting routes as well, especially the A38. On the Essex stretch of the M25, clockwise queues up to junction 30 at the A13. After an accident, although all the lanes are back open. Very busy on the M1 in South Yorkshire going southbound to junction 37 at Barnsley. That was after an accident, although all the lanes are now back open. And long delays continue in Greater Manchester on the M60 anti-clockwise to junction 24 at Denton Island. It's slow from junction 4 at the M56 after that flooding from earlier.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, James O'Brien.
George Eustace has solved the cost of living crisis. You should buy own brand products. Well, that's Martin Lewis and Jack Monroe out of a job.
James O'Brien on LBC.
So that's an Americano, 2 lattes and a flat white with oat milk.
Jasmine urgently needs to train baristas to make sure business in her coffee shop doesn't grind to a halt.
Oh, you want soya lattes?
Indeed can help her find great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. With Indeed Instant Match, we immediately show you candidates whose CVs on Indeed meet your sponsored job description. Start hiring. Visit Indeed.com/try today.
Call Vic Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973 LBC.
Whatever your garden needs, we've got the perfect properly. You can always trust it.
Get up and at it, as my mother used to say. Get moving. Get your skates on. Get your hair done in the race run. Get behind the wheel. Get picking up and dropping off. Get busy. Get deliveries done. And get home to see Mom. Whatever the mission, Enterprise Rent-A-Car helps over 100,000 every day.
You love Zoom for video meetings? Now, choose Zoom to power your phone communications too. Zoom Phone works seamlessly within the Zoom app as your business phone system. Zoom Phone's secure HD audio and enterprise-grade reliability keep you connected to your teams and your customers. And it's easy to use on mobile, desktop, or desk phone. Empower your workforce with Zoom Phone. Zoom, how the world connects.
When it feels like money's tight, it's good to know that at Tesco, we price match hundreds of products to Aldi every week. From strawberries to crumpets. So you can be sure you'll find the products that matter most to you. Because right now, every little helps. Prices match pro rata and checked on hundreds of comparable products from GB Aldi stores and or online twice weekly. Price most often found matched excluding promotions. Products matched vary by week and availability varies by store excluding Express and Northern Ireland. Details tesco.com/Aldi price match.
Collect a 25,000 Avios welcome bonus with the new Barclaycard Avios Plus credit card when you spend £3,000 in the first 3 months. That could whisk you from everyday to getaway. Check your eligibility now. Search Barclaycard Avios Plus. Representative example, 72.4% APR representative variable. Purchase rate per annum, 23.9% variable. Based on a credit limit of £1,200. £20 monthly fee. Subject to application and financial status. Eligibility and conditions apply. Welcome bonus for new customers only.
Hello, Albert Einstein here. Today I've been visiting some smart local businesses. They use smart meters, which help them feel more in control of budgeting for their business. Smart meters send gas and electricity readings straight to their supplier. So rather than estimates, they'll receive accurate energy bills, meaning they'll know exactly how much they're spending each month. Smart, like me.
Get a smart meter for your business by searching Get a Smart Meter today. Eligibility may vary.
Let's take a moment for that last Big Mac mouthful. You wish you could have that first bite feeling all over again. Well, luckily for you, the Grand Big Mac and the Grand Big Mac Bacon are back at McDonald's, so you can spend longer with the taste you love. Served from 11 a.m. Available until the 7th of June. Participating restaurants only, subject to availability.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
You listen to LBC 950 news breaking at this time. Crossrail's opening date has been announced. Let the parties begin. The Elizabeth Line. Well, how many years behind is this? Can we check on this, please? Have a quick look. The Elizabeth Line will open on Tuesday, May the 24th, says TfL, Transport for London. So there we are. Put it in your diaries. Tuesday, May 24th, Crossrail announce the Elizabeth Line will open. We'll just quickly remind ourselves of how far behind that was, which I've been asked for twice now, and someone will give me those details in just a moment. Right, come back to the impact of burglary and the fact that 500 a day are going unsolved. Colin in Coulston. Colin, what can you tell me? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Thanks for putting me on. I'm going to rush through this because I know I'm short of time. Okay, my girlfriend and I, we went on holiday to Antigua. She parked her car Golf, and I had a car with back seats put down. We went off to Antigua. My neighbour said they'd look after the house, you know, we'd let you know if there's any problems, etc., etc. Halfway through the holiday, my girlfriend gets a phone call at 4 o'clock in the morning from my son, who was in the police, and he said, "You've been burgled." She didn't know what to tell me, so she's distressed halfway through the holiday. Do I tell him? Do I not? What can he do? And anyway, she did in the end. I couldn't come back on Virgin and leave her there, so we came back together. The house was a mess. he boarded up the back window where they got through. My neighbours were so apologetic that they didn't hear or see anything. And what actually happened was they broke into my girlfriend's car, pushed it out to the road. It was pouring down with rain that night. Her car's broken glass rain, and they stole my Golf. When the police spoke to my son and said, "Right, here's a crime number," which is only for insurance purposes. And so we had a look. I phoned up the insurance people, and they said, "Well, we thought you were on holiday." I said, "Well, I was." They said, "But you told me that they stole a suitcase in the list of stuff." I said, "Because I had 2 or 3 suitcases in the front room, and because the back seat was down, they put the TV in it, they put all the small jewellery. Also, they took £200 from a money box."
Right.
And when I talked to the insurance company, I said, "Well, I'm insured for £500 cash." They took £200. "Oh, you can't prove that." They're the next people to rob you. Now, when I talk to my neighbours, they're still devastated. "Why didn't we hear anything? Why didn't we see anything? You trusted us, this, that and the other." Anyway, when I actually come back, I had a look round at the mess, and I found a knife on my windowsill, right? And it wasn't ours, just a kitchen knife of some sort, so it wasn't ours. So I went down to the local bobby shop, which was the community team case, and I saw the sergeant.
Is that Met or is that the Met or Surrey Police?
Yes, Met.
It's the Met. Yeah, go on.
Right. And I said, "But I found this on the windowsill, and it's not mine." "Well, awful sorry." So he's having a look, and the case has been closed until any further evidence. I said, "Well, I found
I've just found here's some evidence. I found a knife. Yeah, go on.
Is anybody going to come and pick it up? Because it's not mine." And I'm pretty cheesed off by this time. And he said, "Well, the case is closed. Why don't you bring it down?" I said, "Hold on, aren't you supposed to have a container? Somebody come and pick it up?" So nothing at all. And in the end, I threw the knife in the bin. And when I spoke to somebody about it, they said, "Well, because they're busy, they've got no information, there was no CCTV footage." In the end, I never actually got to see any policemen around my house at all. And my neighbours are still devastated. And I lost out on insurance claims because you can't prove it. How many people, I will say this to people, if you buy anything of any value, keep receipts. Take photos of any jewellery or expensive watches you've got, because insurance companies will turn around and say, "Prove it."
Colin, thank you for that. In a sentence, what was the impact like for you and your girlfriend?
Oh, gutted, really rolling down complete 2 weeks in Antigua, upset our neighbours, and I'll bet you, if the policeman did catch somebody, the scrope would turn around and say, "Well, they're insured."
And it didn't help, did it? Colin, thank you. The impact there, my heart goes out to you and your girlfriend on that. Julie's in Northampton. Hello, Julie.
Hi,
What happened
Nick.
to you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
No, I'm actually a mother of a police officer.
Oh, right.
Who's wanted to be a police officer since she was 10.
Okay.
She actually...
How do you feel about that, having a serving officer as your daughter? Do you get nervous about that, Julie?
I do at times, yes. She's now, she's 25. She was in Luton when she first started, and she's moved now to Northamptonshire. And she faced all sorts when she was very young. She was a special as well. She's worked very hard. She became a sergeant at 25.
Brilliant.
She loves the job, but
Right.
she's saying every day they just can't get to everybody that they need to get to. A big portion of their time at the moment is spent with mental health cases, and if they go to hospital, they can be there for hours, and they can't leave them because nobody wants to sign them off. There's nowhere for them to go. They're doing the work many times of social workers. They don't want to do a bad job.
No,
they want to catch criminals. That's what she's there to do. And it's so frustrating to hear when people knock the police every day, because they really do try to do the best in the hours that they do. And when you talk about where do the extra officers come from, it's a special events, special occasions where they cancel leave.